6 years ago. Moving to a new area marked an unexpected turn in my life. My wife, Becky, daughter Holly, and I settled into a comfortable home in a friendly neighborhood. We rapidly became friends with our neighbors, Matt and Pam. Matt, a strong real estate salesperson, had a gift for storytelling, whereas Pam, a tall and slim blonde, was a devoted mother to their son, Chet. Becky and Pam became fast friends, frequently getting together, while Matt and I connected over golf, making it a monthly routine. Our families became closer through several dinners, celebrations, and informal get-togethers. Despite our age difference, Matt and I had a passion for golf and frequently played friendly competitions. Becky and Pam's camaraderie deepened our link, giving us the impression that we were part of an extended family. I had no idea that these everyday moments would soon be eclipsed by events that would test my marriage and disturb our interwoven lives. On a memorable golf day, I had a decent round, finishing 18 holes with 7 shots over par. Matt and I had been golfing together around twice a month for years. When Becky and I moved in together, he became my friend. Matt, a big man and a wonderful communicator, excelled in real estate. Pam stayed at home to care for their son, Chet, who recently turned 18 and is preparing for university. Pam and Becky hit it off right away, and they now meet many times per week. Becky, a fit and lovely natural blonde with shoulder-length hair, was the most beautiful woman to me until she said, "We need to talk." I prepared expecting unpleasant news. At first I suspected it was a problem with her car or a family issue. Our daughter Holly recently turned 18 and began dating a boy called Dean. My thoughts raced through various possibilities, including pregnancy, but I was virtually certain of it. I sat down with Becky. "Henry, my sweetheart, you know how much I adore you, right?" Becky spoke softly and tenderly. "Of course, Beck." I had absolutely no doubts about it, I replied, attempting to seem happy despite my growing fears that she was pregnant. "And I do. Henry, I love you deeply and will always do. I'm looking forward to spending the rest of our lives together," Becky continued in a real and loving tone. "Me too, honey, but what is the problem?" I inquired, thinking something was amiss. "Henry, we've been together for 20 years, 18 of them married. Every day I grow to love you more. I have dedicated my life to you and Holly. Would you agree?" she asked. Her tone was now serious and focused. I realized it wasn't about Holly, but something Becky wanted that she assumed I'd disagree to. She never mentioned desiring another child, so I promptly dismissed that possibility. "I agree. Honey, you always put Holly and me first. Yes, and that is why I am confident you will back me now," she said with a cheerful tone. "Well, I am listening," I replied. My curiosity piqued. "Henry, our bodies, energy levels, and sexuality all change as we get older. You've always been a superb lover, but as you get older, it becomes more difficult to keep up." "That's natural, and I get that," Becky remarked, her voice calm but with a hint of something more. I didn't like how things had suddenly turned out. The last thing a man wants is for his wife to question his masculinity. I had a bad feeling. She kept talking, and I just nodded, waiting for the true issue to appear. "For me, it's different. I need to be close virtually every day," she said with a slightly imploring tone. "Do you suppose I feel the same way, Becky? I love you and want to take care of you, but you can't entirely avoid biology," I said, attempting to keep my voice quiet. "I know and understand, and I do not blame you." "It's just part of maturing," she said, her voice softening. "Okay, Becky, you have laid out my sexual flaws. Will you get to the point?" I inquired, my patience fraying as she lamented my inability to completely satisfy her. I suspected she was going to seek for permission to have an affair. I was almost correct. "Henry, please understand. I am not trying to demean you. This is difficult for me to say, but I hope we can debate it gently." Becky spoke, her voice wavering slightly. I remained silent, waiting. "Henry, I have a lover." "It's been over a year," she eventually admitted, her voice breaking. I was astonished and unable to answer. She kept chatting to break the stillness. "We meet a few times per week. I do not love him. I only adore you. I tried to keep things normal at home. You had me whenever you wanted, and that will not change. You are my hubby, and your needs come first," she insisted, her voice eager for comprehension. "So do you intend to continue this?" I inquired, my voice quivering with restrained rage. "Yes, Henry. My needs have escalated, and I require this. But it won't influence my feelings for you or our lovemaking, she said firmly. Who is he? I demanded. My voice rises. I'm not saying it isn't one of your friends or colleagues, just somebody I met. She responded, her voice flat. And you expect me to accept that because I love you? I spoke with incredulity, coloring my words. Yes, I understand that you love me and want me to be happy. I worked hard to ensure you didn't detect any changes. The alternative would be divorce, alimony, and child support. I love you and don't want that, she stated. Her voice was suddenly calm and calculated. I tried to remain calm, but inside I was enraged. How dare she threaten to divorce me? Holly can be unhappy living with a dishonest mother. You have it all figured out, right? You tricked me and want me to accept it, I said, my voice full of cynicism. Please do not perceive it this way, honey, she pleaded. Don't call me that, I snapped. Being angry and using filthy words will not help, she said, her voice admonishing. I responded, It may not, but it makes me feel better. I realize this is difficult to hear, but it will not affect us. You didn't notice before and won't in the future. It's simply something I do for myself. It's like volunteering in my spare time, she remarked, her voice disconnected. Okay, supposing I believe you, which I do not. But why now? I inquired, my tone tinted with mistrust. What do you mean? She inquired, confused. You lied and deceived me for a year. Why inform me now? I demanded, seeking to grasp her motivation. I intended to express how much I love you and how grateful I am for permitting this. But he is taking me to Hawaii for a week, Becky said, her voice calm but firm. Are you kidding me? You depart for a week with your lover and I work to support you, and I am supposed to welcome you back. What did I do to deserve such disrespect? I retaliated, my rage scarcely restrained. You did nothing, Henry. This is not disrespectful to you. I need you to understand that I'm doing this for myself, and it doesn't affect how I feel about you. She responded, pleading for understanding. I don't understand it. What about Holly? What are you going to tell her about your solo vacation? We have always traveled as a family, I questioned, trying to understand the situation. I've already told Holly that some friends and I are going on a trip, and it will not interfere with our family vacation this summer. She didn't mind and may even be glad I'm leaving, Becky explained, almost cheerfully. She giggled, which seemed like a joke. Oh, this is such a light-hearted subject, and you think I will let her believe this lie? I asked incredulously. What evidence do you have otherwise? Henry? I showed her the brochures and promised to tell her all about it when I returned. She'd rather believe me than you, she stated confidently. So do whatever you want, and my opinion is irrelevant if I don't like it. Too bad. How do you plan to stay married to me after this? I demanded, feeling the weight of her betrayal. We love each other, Henry. Becky insisted that everything would be back to normal once I returned, her voice soothing but unconvincing. I am tired of this nonsense, I said, my patience drained. She hadn't considered the long-term consequences. Even if she leaves, we will not remain married. Things will not be the same. I gave it one last try. Becky, do not go. We can work on our marriage and make things better. Just, please, don't go, Henry. I'm going. But everything will be as before. You'll see. I love you too much to let this change anything, she replied, her resolve unshaken. I tried. This has already changed everything. But you've done your duty by telling me. Have a good time. Unlike you, I won't lie. I'll be in the carpentry shop if you care, I said, my voice heavy with resignation. Henry, be careful. Operating power tools when emotional is risky, she said. I headed to the basement, ignoring her. I couldn't believe she believed I'd agree to this. Despite her ideas, I meant to inform Holly what her mother was up to. A journey to Hawaii, of all places. We had planned to go there as a family. Now she chose to go with that guy. I evaluated my alternatives. Divorce was likely in our no-fault state. I'd be accountable for child support and possibly alimony. I could afford it, but I didn't like the notion of her living with her lover while I worked and lived alone. I didn't see any other option but to stay until Holly departed for college, then go. But I wouldn't touch Becky again. I'd been in the workshop for hours when I heard Holly arrive home. Typically, she spent Saturdays with friends or Dean. I chose to tell Holly the truth. I overheard her talking to Becky. Hello, Mom. Have you told your father about your trip to Hawaii with Mr. Harrington yet? Holly inquired, her voice easygoing yet tinged with curiosity. Damn, she knew everything. Becky had not told her a story about pals. Holly knew the truth and didn't care. Who is Mr. Harrington? Did Holly know him? I thought to myself, feeling a rush of rage and confusion. Yes, I informed him he was unhappy and he's now sulking in the carpenter shop. But he will come around. Becky responded dismissively, saying, he has no choice. I can't believe he's this selfish, Mom. If he truly loved you, he would be delighted for you to have your needs addressed. He'll have to understand that you need a younger man. If he gets his way, he has no right to complain. Holly remarked, her voice filled with adolescent outrage. Who was this kid? Becky had been stuffing Holly's head with garbage for years. She really was Becky's mini-me. I recognized with a sinking heart. I told him this, but he took it personally. His delicate macho ego cannot accept this. He cannot supply all of my wants. I emphasized that individuals change with age, but he still sees me as his wife. Becky continued, her voice full of disdain. No respect. I am delighted I introduced you to Mr. Harrington. He's excited about the vacation and has some special planned for you. Holly spoke almost enthusiastically. My daughter knew about the affair and helped her mother. She seems to pleasure in my humiliation. How does my 18-year-old daughter know anyone older than her whom Becky could date and afford to travel to Hawaii? At the very least, I have a name to explore. I reflected, feeling a combination of betrayal and resolution. Honey, please don't tell him about our sex life. It's uncomfortable and inappropriate, Becky said, her voice suddenly severe. You informed me that things were not going well with Dad, and that it was time to find a lover just as Grandma did. You whined about not meeting anyone, so I found someone for you. That allows me some freedom. Holly answered with defiance and pride. True, but you still shouldn't discuss it with Rick. You are underage and he is your teacher, Becky said, her voice full of concern. I couldn't believe what I heard. My wife and daughter were conniving and Holly was talking about stuff she shouldn't have understood. I needed to tackle the matter square on, but first, I needed to collect all of the data. Jackpot. My ideas have taken a severe change. I would not dwell in the same house as these two traitors. Divorce was not an option either. I would be liable for Holly's costs until she graduated in June. I'd relocate, live elsewhere, and maintain a household account for bills and food. I'd stay in touch via email and phone while selecting which costs to fund. Holly's days of having everything she desired. It was as if the car she had been asking for was no longer available. I was able to organize everything in 2 weeks while Becky's credit cards were still active. I'd have an easy time finding a place to reside. I wouldn't pretend everything was okay, but I wouldn't make a big deal either. Holly would soon discover that I knew about her role in her mother's betrayal, and I was wondering how she would respond. I went upstairs to shower and decided to head out to dinner. I did not want to sit at the table with traitors. I entered the kitchen. Both looked at me. Holly ran up as usual. Hello, Daddy. Holly spoke cheerfully. She wanted to hug me, but I simply stood there. She backed backward, bewildered. What is the problem, Dad? She inquired, her tone confused. I looked at them and went to my bedroom. I'd shift my belongings to a spare room until I could depart, for now. I closed the doors and entered the shower. Becky couldn't leave me alone. She found her way inside. What the hell was that? Be furious at me if you want, but don't take it out on your daughter, Becky remarked in a harsh tone. She didn't do anything to you. I glanced at her before getting back into the shower. So it's the quiet treatment. How mature. Let me know when you're done sulking. Dinner is ready, she announced, closing the door behind her. I shrugged and dressed. Coming out, I noticed the meeting. They fell hushed as I arrived. Holly smiled, expecting I would join them and perhaps apologize. I turned and walked away. I got into my BMW and departed. I ate alone at a neighborhood steakhouse and passed the time by reading news stories. No calls from anyone. I saw a late movie, arrived home around 1 a.m. and discovered everyone sleeping. I quickly fell asleep in the guest room. Regardless, my wonderful moments were short-lived. I still thought Becky was attractive. Why did you sleep here last night? She asked. To avoid you. Becky, I did not want to sleep with you, I responded sharply. It appears that portion of you is intrigued, she said, reaching out. I turned aside, getting out of bed, and noticed disappointment on her face. Henry, I am still the woman you have loved all these years. Let me take care of you, she murmured quietly. Becky, You are not the same lady, and it was not the heart you shared. So long as you have another partner, I'm out. It's your decision, your husband or boyfriend. I spoke, my voice firm. You are not being reasonable. I know you love me and will eventually understand my perspective. I want you to be happy. So you'll give me this, she said, exiting the room. Sunday was like Saturday. I remained in the workshop and returned for dinner. I worked late every evening for the next 2 weeks, and the time passed quickly. Every night, I asked Becky not to go on the vacation. Becky, please don't call him and terminate things. Let's work on ourselves. I begged Henry. I understand how difficult this is, but I need to leave. She insisted that it would only be 1 week before we could resume our relationship. So you're going to keep seeing him? It's not just you and I inquired, feeling sadness. Yes, Henry. I apologize, but this is what I need. If you love me, you will understand, she stated, her tone unwavering. This continued until the night before she left. Holly approached me a few days later after I overheard her and Becky talking. Dad, please stop avoiding me. We need to talk about this. Please, Holly said. I love you, in a sincere tone. Holly, I could tell you why I'm angry, but let someone else explain. I reacted with a heavy voice. Anyone else? What do you mean? She asked, puzzled. Ask your teacher, Mr. Harrington. You set him up with your mother to trick me. Maybe he can respond to you, I replied, watching her response. Holly was astonished that I understood her role as Becky's lover, but she didn't apologize like her mother. So I introduced them. How? She asked calmly. I overheard you talking with your mother, I responded. It's just Zach's father. I don't love him, she remarked dismissively. Why is everyone saying that? As if it justified it. Marriage encompasses more than just sex and love, I explained, trying to make her understand that she is leaving and there is nothing you can do. Do your best and you will continue to get what you deserve, Holly said, exiting the room. She left the room, dismissing me and my emotions. We avoided each other until her mother departed. Finally, the day arrived. Becky was packed and waited in the living room for her taxi. Holly was with her, speaking enthusiastically. I waited in the workshop until I heard the automobile come. My taxi is here, honey. I would like to check out. Bye. This means nothing. You will see, Becky shouted out, her voice artificially pleasant. She waited for the response. Are you not going to kiss me goodbye? She inquired with a note of expectation in her voice. Nope, I responded plainly. As you wish. She spoke, her voice laced with resignation. Eventually, I heard the door close and Becky's heels hit the kitchen floor. The front door closed, followed by the sound of her baggage and the automobile engine starting. It marked the end of my marriage. I took the week off during Becky's absence and secretly packed my belongings out while Holly was at school. I returned my possessions from the guest room to the bedroom, thinking that Holly would believe I was staying and thus give them a false sense of security. I avoided discussing my move or divorce because I wanted Becky to assume I'd be there when she returned. She was due return Saturday evening, and I planned to leave by then. Holly was aware that I was aware of her involvement in the affair, and she made no effort to conceal it. One evening, when she was preparing supper, my phone rang with Becky's call, which I dismissed. Holly's phone rang, and I overheard the chat. Hello, Mom. How was your trip? That sounds great. No, he's here because he knows who you are and how I introduced you. There is no purpose in hiding. He took his belongings back to your bedroom as soon as you left. He was bluffing, exactly as you suspected. I suppose he's accepted it. Okay, I will inform him. I love you. She then conveyed Becky's message. Mom requested me to tell you that she loves you and that everything will be as it was when she returns. I nodded and accepted her comments. The remainder of the week unfolded similarly. I gradually moved my goods to my new flat, bringing only personal items. On Friday evening, I recognized that my relationship with Holly was permanently ruined. Following supper, Holly approached me. Will you ever talk to me about anything other than complaining and monosyllabic responses again? You've forgiven Mom, but what about me? Holly inquired, her voice full of frustration and hurt. I stared at her quizzically. Why do you believe I've forgiven your mother? I inquired, honestly perplexed. You returned to the bedroom. That means you're going to sleep with her and forgive her, she said, her tone implying that this was a foregone conclusion. "Holly, I have not and will never forgive your mother. She ruined everything we had." I spoke, my voice steady but filled with underlying pain. "I don't understand why you're acting this way," Holly said, her voice rising with frustration. "She wants it. And that is the difference. Holly, you're barely 18. You don't completely understand," I responded calmly. She stood up, angry. "Just because I am 18 does not mean I don't understand what my mother is going through." She described everything to me. She spoke defiantly. I, too, became angry and raised my voice. "Yes," she explained it from a selfish perspective. She decided she was the only person who mattered. I yelled, unable to contain my frustration. "This is nonsense, Father. She was always there for you and me, and she finally did something for herself." "You couldn't take it," Holly replied, her words cutting deep. Her words cut deeply. "Oh, Dad, I am so sorry," she continued, suddenly recognizing the significance of her remarks. The hate and hatred I felt for my daughter at the time were overwhelming. "Holly, don't ever talk to me again," I said in a chilly, definitive tone. I walked out and went to my bedroom for the last time, ignoring Holly. "Please." I spent the night gathering my last belongings. My heart is burdened with shattered trust and ruined relationships. I took a taxi from the airport instead of asking Rick for a ride. Since Holly told me Henry was back in the bedroom, I didn't want to upset Henry by seeing Rick. Everything was going great, and I didn't want to upset the boat. When I entered the house, the cab driver brought my items inside. It was almost supper time, and I expected Henry or Holly to have something ready, but there was nothing. Maybe Henry was preparing a dinner to commemorate my return. I heard footsteps on the stairs, and Holly raced to hug me, crying, "Hi, baby. I missed you too, but there's no reason to mourn." I spoke gently, attempting to calm her. She wept and trembled. "It is clear that you are missing more than simply me." I drew her face away to look at her. "What is wrong, baby? Where is Dad?" I asked. My voice is filled with concern. She fought with her emotions for a few minutes before speaking. "Dad moved out. I drove him away." "What exactly are you talking about?" "You informed me he returned to the bedroom." I mentioned that perplexity and worry were warring within me. "Yes, but we had a fight last night, and I said something terrible. This morning, he and his belongings were gone." "There's a note on the table," she said, her voice breaking. I saw a note that I had previously overlooked, with an increasing sense of dread. I picked it up. It was printed from the computer with the exception of Henry's signature. "Becky, I hope your time in Hawaii with Rick Harrington was worthwhile because it cost you your marriage and could cost Rick his job. The school board will not approve your relationship. I've moved out with only my personal possessions. I will ultimately receive my tools and woodworking supplies. I'm not sure why your sexual demands became more important than our marriage. I was willing to forgive your year-long affair. If you canceled the trip and vowed never to see him again. However, our marriage terminated after the taxi left. I also cannot understand why you included our daughter in your affair. She disrespects me as a result of your influence. You've most certainly harmed her ability to maintain a regular relationship. I simply left you and Holly physically. I did not shirk my obligations. Your bills will continue to be paid automatically, and monies will be put into your household account to cover necessary needs. Don't expect to pay extra for entertainment. Your joys no longer interest me. I left my email and phone number for emergencies. If you require anything, please email me, and I will determine whether I will fund the request. Don't spam my inbox with requests to come home or excuses. I will delete them without reading. Michael knows where I live, but he refuses to tell me. If you try to enter my office, security will deny you access. I will tell you what I told Holly following her harsh speech. I don't want to speak to you or her ever again. Your selfish acts have harmed both relationships. Chips and I will no longer be part of your lives. I am confident Holly will find someone to lead her down the aisle. I've loved you both for a long time, but your attitude has become destructive. I will not let you do this to me. Henry." Tears rushed down my cheeks as I finished reading Henry's letter. This was not how it was intended to be. He was supposed to love me forever and realize that this was not about him or us. Involving Holly was a mistake. However, it began with female talk. She told me about herself, and Dean and I talked about Henry and myself to foster trust. I explained her grandmother's affair, and Holly introduced me to Rick during her choir performance. Henry was handsome and sexy, and I enjoyed spending time with him. That evening. After that, Holly kept bringing him up, saying he wasn't seeking for anything serious, just some fun. I grabbed the bait and began calling him one evening while Henry was out of town. I invited Rick over to dinner. We ended up at his apartment, where I spent the night. Holly found out what had transpired the following morning. We discussed it like old buddies. It was exciting, and I thought I could continue seeing Rick without Henry finding out. For months, Rick and I met a few times every week, secretly. I made sure Rick didn't become too attached. Our affair continued. Rick invited me to Hawaii around the anniversary of our first night together. Henry and I had intended to go, but the prospect of a week in paradise was too appealing. As a housewife, I couldn't explain such an extended absence, but I told myself that Henry wouldn't mind and would let me leave. I reasoned that if I explained there was no love between Rick and me, just sex, Henry would understand. That's why I told him 2 weeks in advance, believing he would accept it. Obviously, that did not happen. I was confident that when I returned and everything was back to normal, Henry would notice that it had not affected him, but he departed, and I overestimated his love for me. The love of my life has left me, but I'm resourceful and I'm confident I can find him and persuade him to see things my way. Before I resume, I may need to calm things down with Rick and persuade Henry that it is over. Henry's brother Michael knows his new address, but I doubt he'll help. Perhaps Fiona, Michael's wife, would. Once I find Henry, I should be able to persuade him to return. He didn't suggest divorce, so he obviously doesn't want to lose me. He could be trying to make a statement with his. I doubt he meant his message, "I never want to talk to you again." He will realize that he cannot live without me. I'll start calling Fiona on Monday when Michael is at work. Until then, Holly and I will make do. It was a gorgeous day, so I decided to rest by the pool. The apartment complex where I relocated offered a pool, a fitness facility, and a large common area for events. I had lived here for a few months. The initial week was spent unpacking and working. For the next 3 weeks, I was depressed and watched television. Finally, I resolved to live again and went to the pool to relax and enjoy the sun. The water was probably too cool for me, but reclining in the sun and reading was ideal. I went on several dates, but no one piqued my interest. I was still mourning the death of my family and missing Becky, whom I had married. I'd been lying in a sun lounger for almost an hour when a shadow fell on me. I opened my eyes and noticed a gorgeous woman. "Hello, I have not seen you here before. Did you just move in?" she inquired, her tone kind and curious. "Approximately 2 months ago. My name is Henry," I replied with a smile. "Michelle, it's good to meet you. Can I join you?" she inquired, indicating toward the lounger next to mine. "Of course, have a seat," I replied, sitting up slightly to make room. She smiled and positioned a lounger next to mine. She had long brown hair and a stunning body, but no wedding ring. She turned to me and inquired, "So, Henry, are you newly divorced or simply attempting to appear single?" "Why are you asking?" I asked, wondering about her observation. "Your finger has a tan line where a wedding ring formerly was." She spoke with keen eyes, very perceptive. "Did you notice I also checked your finger?" I said, impressed with her attention to detail. "Well, I am not divorced. I moved out when my wife was in Hawaii with her lover." I admitted to having a variety of emotions. "Oh my God, such a fascinating story." She spoke, leaning in slightly. "It's not really interesting to live it, but I can understand how it may appear from the outside," I replied, shrugging. "Is there any prospect of reconciliation?" she inquired, her tone compassionate. "No, I do care for her." Her actions, however, came to a stop. "Is there any chance of that?" I replied strongly. "Tell me about it when you invite me to dinner tonight." She indicated a fun smile on her lips. "Is there a certain place you want to go?" I inquired, intrigued by her directness. "Somewhere pleasant. And will you invite me to dance? My daughter is staying with my sister, so we can go out late." She spoke, her eyes gleaming with eagerness. "That sounds wonderful." I accepted, feeling a rush of excitement. Michelle stared at me and made eye contact. "Let's be clear, Henry. I like you, and you appear to like me. Nevertheless, I do not sleep with married men. So, if you want a shot, you'll need to figure out your marital situation." She spoke in a forceful but caring voice. "I believe I just received the motivation I needed. Let's see how dinner goes first," I replied, feeling a renewed sense of drive. We spent an additional hour sitting by the pool, generally in solitude, saving talking for supper. As I prepared for my appointment with Michelle, I considered this unexpected turn. I enjoyed being married but was hesitant to start a new relationship. My thoughts toward Holly were mixed. She had uttered cruel things motivated by her mother's beliefs. I knew I'd attempt to work things out with her someday, but Becky was done. I would not let her prevent me from living my life, even if it meant paying her off. I picked up Michelle at 6 p.m. We also visited a high-end Brazilian eatery in downtown. I'd been there previously, but Michelle had not. She wore an emerald green dress that exposed some skin on top. I told her that she looked stunning. "Thank you, sir. You look wonderful," Michelle replied with a smile. I took her hand and escorted her to my BMW, opened the door for her as my mother had instructed me. We drove around downtown, discussing the sights we passed. We held hands and it felt good. We were seated at a romantic table in a hidden alcove owing to a carefully placed $50 note. We settled in and were greeted by Kelsey, our server. We ordered drinks and started talking. "Do I need to ask for another waitress?" Michelle asked. "Why?" I reacted in confusion. "If she keeps bothering you, I'll claw her eyeballs out, which I wouldn't want to do." She spoke with a sly twinkle in her eyes. I noticed the playfulness in her eyes and grinned, but I made a mental note to tone it down just in case. She grabbed my hand to calm me down. "Henry, I like you and want to know you better." Michelle responded softly. "I did not mean to offend the waitress." "I'm flattered you made your claim on me," I said, feeling a pleasant flush. "So what are you doing for a living?" she asked. Genuinely interested. "I am a mechanical engineer and Alpha Logistics Senior Vice President." "And you?" I inquired. "I'm alone. Officer with First National. Though I could live on my ex-husband's alimony and child support, he cheated on me with his secretary and got her pregnant." She spoke steadily, but with an undercurrent of anguish. "I cannot see someone cheating on someone as attractive as you," I replied, shaking my head in astonishment. "Thank you." "Do you have children?" she asked. "Holly is an 18-year-old daughter, but we don't chat much because she agrees with her mother on infidelity." I stated with a hint of regret in my voice. "I'd like to know more about your wife, but only if you're comfortable." Michelle spoke gently. "I don't mind, even though I come across quite well in my side of the story," I said, hoping to lighten the mood. "Do not worry. I'll decide for myself," she reassured me. I gave her the scenario, starting with the "we need to discuss" moment and ending with Holly's angry outburst and my early morning departure. "Henry, it sounds like Holly is as affected by her mother's influence as you are," Michelle replied sympathetically. "It stings that Mom thinks so little of me, even if it is Becky's fault," I concede. "Keep communication channels open. She'll come around sometime," she said. "I hope so." "I'll make an effort," I said with determination. "Are you prepared to share your experience, Michelle?" I asked. "My ex-gay is the VP of a gym company. He hired a new assistant, and they began sleeping together during business travels. His supervisors even cautioned him when she became pregnant. I left him and received significant alimony and child support. I don't have to work, but it gives me a reason to get up every day," she remarked. "That's quite juicy. Maybe not as much as an affair in Hawaii, but still enjoyable. I notice that you are dealing well with the split. Yes, but loneliness can overwhelm me. It was the correct decision, yet I miss what we had," she admitted. "Call me if you ever feel bad. I will come over. We can discuss or watch a movie. I've been there and will help you," I offered truly. "Thank you, Henry." "I might take you up on that," she remarked, smiling. She grinned and took my hand. I felt compelled to do something, so I rose up and kissed her on the cheek. I smiled and said, "I look forward to more kisses, including longer ones, when you give me a ride home." I kissed her again and went back to my seat. Our dinner and discussion were both fantastic. We went to a dance club for the elderly. Michelle, 35, was the most stunning lady there, and men kept asking her to dance, but she turned them all down. We danced together several times, moving smoothly and staying close. At 2 a.m., we paused at her apartment door. "I had a great time, Henry," Michelle remarked, her eyes shining. "I agree. Michelle, can I see you tomorrow, or is it too early?" I asked, hoping for a positive answer. "No, not too soon. If I could see you sooner, I would." She responded with a smile. "Great. I need to pick up Joni at 11, so it has to be before then. I do not introduce her to anyone until we have been dating for at least a month." "What about breakfast at my place? I make an excellent omelet," I recommended. "I'll be there at 8 p.m. She agreed. The knock arrived at 8:30, and I appreciated the promptness. Michelle was dressed in black yoga pants and a white long-sleeve blouse, looking as if she had just slept for 12 hours. "I brought sliced fruit for your omelet," she added, holding the bowl in one hand and pushing me closer to her for a kiss. She entered the kitchen confidently and examined the ingredients. "I'd want bacon, spinach, and cheese with mine." She suggested that I arrange the fruit on plates while I cooked the omelet. She started opening drawers and cabinets, which puzzled me. Our kitchens are set up roughly identically. "I find it interesting," she said with a chuckle. I laughed as I finished dishing the omelet. I felt at ease with Michelle, as if we had known each other for ages. We sat on the sofa and talked when we finished eating. It was almost time for her to pick up Joni from her sister's residence. I led her to the car and gave her a kiss farewell. "Call me later," she added as she drove away. On Monday morning, I scheduled an appointment with a divorce attorney. I asked a guy at Alpha who had handled his divorce. He advised a tough lawyer that his ex had used. I located her phone number online and arranged an appointment for Wednesday. Becky did not want a divorce, so I assumed she would not initiate one. I was eager to explore my connection with Michelle and wondered if simply filing for divorce would suffice. Michelle and I talked on the phone for the next 2 evenings. I told her about my lawyer appointment, and she assured me it would be worthwhile. On Wednesday, my brother Michael called me. "What's up, bro?" I greeted him. "I'm just updating you. Becky constantly asking about your address." "She has been attempting to persuade Fiona to help her," Michael informed me. "Fiona refuses to tell her anything, but Becky is getting desperate." He added, "Thank you for being my buffer, Mike. Let me know if there's anything I can do for you," I replied gratefully. "It's not required, but we'll figure something out," he responded. "Has she tried anything in your office?" I inquired, apprehensive. "She tried a few times, but got nowhere. She still calls every day, and our secretary treats it as a game," Michael remarked with a giggle. The legal meeting went nicely. Denise Duncan, who specializes in assisting women in divorces, accepted my case after reviewing the information I had obtained from a private investigator. She believed we could use this evidence to our advantage, despite her request that we use the investigator's findings. I was prepared to split everything equally and accept alimony and child support. That evening, as I was deciding what to eat, I heard a knock on the door. Michelle entered with a picnic basket and plates. I grabbed them from her, set them on the table, and kissed her. "Wow, baby. That was a pleasant reception. I missed you, too." "Where is Joni?" Michelle inquired, beaming at me. "She is out for pizza with a pal." I assumed you hadn't eaten yet and wanted to hear how the legal visit went. She said, "We both want this to start." Her eyes widened with anticipation. "Yes, baby, we do. We need to communicate clearly, and the marriage certificate is in the way. Let us eat." I responded, relieved by her encouragement. She brought out containers of brisket and potato salad, and we began eating. While we ate, I told them about my visit to the lawyer. "You are being kinder than I was. Jay and I were married for only 9 years. Should I be tougher?" Michelle inquired, looking thoughtful. "That is up to you, my dear, but I appreciate that you are attentive and fair. I'm confident that if we disagree, you will remain sensible." Jay couldn't do it. I responded, appreciating her understanding. She stayed with me for approximately 2 hours before receiving a call indicating they had returned from the pizzeria. I escorted her halfway to her apartment and watched her enter. She was wary and wouldn't let me walk her all the way home. I felt as if I had flown back to my apartment. I was becoming very upset. I couldn't believe Fiona was refusing to help me. Women were meant to assist one another. She refused to locate Henry's new address. I tried to follow him home from work, but he never went straight. Or I lost him in traffic, before I met Rick, twice every week. However, once Henry left, it became 3 to 4 times per week. I needed it. And with Henry gone, everything was his fault. I turned to Rick more frequently. However, Rick has only met with me once in the last 2 weeks. He is under pressure from the school board's inquiry into our affair and is attempting to avoid being dismissed. The union is battling for him, but the situation does not look good. We didn't consider the repercussions. I was beginning to believe that the Hawaii trip, as fantastic as it was a huge mistake. Money was also tight. Henry gives me just enough for Holly and myself. We have to eat at home every night and can only watch movies on premium channels because we cannot afford to go to the theater. Even then, we ordered too many movies, and Henry threatened to cut off our cable if we didn't limit the amount. He's being totally unreasonable. Holly is here, and at least she has Dean to take her out occasionally, but I can't give her money to spend, so Dean has to pay each time. Dean is now urging Holly to have sex to contribute to the relationship, and she is upset with me. All of this is because Henry's ego cannot take another younger man taking care of my needs. I still love him, but if he comes back, he must meet all of my requirements or accept that I will have someone by my side. This is not mentioned on a bright Friday morning at 9:45 a.m. My telephone rang. Becky must have received her divorce papers about 9:30. I did not answer because I was at work, but I did listen to the voicemail immediately. It's completely out of control, Henry. I destroyed the papers. I will not sign them. We are not getting divorced. You need to call me right now so that we can proceed together. Becky spoke, her voice angry and demanding. I was not surprised by her response. She still believed that I should accept her acts and that it was my fault, not hers. I hadn't mentioned the private investigator's findings yet, but it could be the tipping point in this case. The investigator discovered proof quickly in Hawaii, where they were less cautious. Michelle and I planned to go out tonight. We only met a week ago, so I was unfamiliar with Joni. Tonight, we were meeting Michelle's sister Lori and her husband Jeff, while the kids were with friends. I was nervous, but optimistic. Michelle looked stunning when I picked her up in a knee-length purple dress and heels. We met Jeff and Lori at the restaurant and exchanged introductions. We sat at a square table with Michelle to my right and Lori on my left. Lori asked. Michelle stated, "You're getting divorced. How's it going?" Michelle expected me to handle this alone. My wife received the papers today, but she intends to fight it. She can't make me stay married, but she will try, I replied, trying to maintain a steady tone. But you have proof of her betrayal. Lori emphasized the point. Yes, which we can utilize as leverage. Her mother is likewise an unrepentant cheater, so there's no help there. However, her volunteer group may be concerned. Eventually, it will be possible to proceed without her signature. If I wait long enough. I explained, outlining my idea. Do you expect Michelle to wait for this? Lori inquired, her gaze tightening. I'm not expecting Michelle to do anything she doesn't want to. If she decides not to wait, I will respect that decision, but I hope she does, I said, looking at Michelle with sincerity. I hadn't planned on worrying about the divorce, but I'm doing it to be with her, I explained. I know, I believe she is worth the wait. I spoke with resolve. Lori glanced at me, absorbing my remarks, while Jeff grinned, clearly impressed. For the time being, I approve of you. But you must perform well on the dance floor, Lori stated in her tone. Lightning. I'm looking forward to it, I said, feeling relieved and excited. The evening was great. Michelle and I kept close the entire night, except when we swapped dance partners. Lori was taller and leaner with straight blonde hair, but Michelle was bustier and rounder. Despite their distinctions, they were clearly sisters. While dancing with Lori, she mentioned that Michelle told her about your wife. I'm truly sorry. Thanks. It took a toll on my self-esteem, but Michelle was quite helpful. I responded, appreciating her sympathy. She genuinely likes you. Please do not hurt her, Lori said with a serious tone. I will not. She means a lot to me. I truly like her, I reassured her, aware of the weight of her remarks. Michelle had to pick up the kids once she returned to the apartment complex. Lori and Jeff's children, Alexis and Marcus, had a babysitter. I kissed Michelle goodbye as she got into her car and walked back to my flat. I had barely gotten into bed when there was a knock at the door. When I saw Michelle through the crowd, I opened it and she kissed me. Call me tomorrow, she whispered. She left, and I went to bed to ease the strain. I couldn't afford a lawyer, but the documentation stated that Henry would pay fair charges because he was filing. I found a lawyer who agreed to take the case, understanding that money would come later. She advised me that the divorce would proceed regardless of whether I signed the paperwork. The judge would decide the parameters, which would most likely be identical to Henry's plan. Henry offered me the house for Holly's senior year and a year following, as well as 3 years of child support till June. Following that, the house would be sold or I might purchase it. I couldn't believe what was occurring. Why would I jeopardize my marriage for something that had no long-term influence on Henry? I tried to meet Rick the following week, but he declined, stating it was only fun since I was married. He no longer finds it fascinating that I am getting divorced. Henry was correct. Rick was an a-hole. Holly is a disaster. She misses her father deeply. She and I were always close, but she did a lot with Henry and still misses him in her life. Everything is not as it should be. It's been 2 weeks since I met Michelle's sister, Lori, and not much has changed in the divorce. Becky continues to refuse to sign the paperwork and requests counseling, but it seems like a waste of time. Michelle and I meet whenever we can, usually just a few minutes after she puts Joni to bed. Lori helps us manage a few dates each week. Lori simply requests that we reciprocate the favor sometime, and I agreed. Lori babysat Joni again on Saturday, while I took Michelle out to supper and a performance downtown. While holding hands at dinner, we heard a scream from across the table. "Get your damn hands off my spouse now!" Becky yelled, racing toward us with several embarrassed friends in following. "Yes, Becky, you saw me having supper with my neighbor." "Congratulations," I said, trying to remain cool. "Oh, don't tell me this is only dinner. I'm confident you will have more later. Look at her. She is probably giving herself away." Becky spat, her voice filled with hate. Michelle stayed calm. "I honor wedding vows, even if they are not mine. We haven't done anything yet, but I'm looking forward to when we will." "Becky, thank you for leaving him," she remarked in a measured tone. Becky was dragged out as she shouted, "Stay away from him!" which made me worry if her pals stayed with her. Michelle reassured me, "So is this your wife?" "I'm very sorry, honey. It is not worth it. This will be an excellent story to tell. Lori and Jeffrey." The rest of the evening was less dramatic, and we really liked the music. Michelle spent a lot of time sitting on my lap, her perfume mesmerizing me as we drove home together. I made my decision at her flat door. I said to Michelle, "Honey, I need to tell you something." She peered into my eyes and put her hands behind my neck. "What is it?" she asked quietly. I never imagined that would be possible, particularly so fast. But I am absolutely in love with you. You are my final thought, at night and early in the morning. I understand that we will have obstacles in the future, but I wanted you to know how I feel. My voice was full with emotion. She kissed me. "And I love you, Henry. You are a beautiful person, and I can't believe you are mine. We have a lot to conquer, but it will not prevent us from being together. If things were different, we'd be in my bed right now. When the time comes, the wait will be worthwhile." We stood on her porch, hugging and kissing. We knew we couldn't go inside without succumbing to temptation. After one final kiss, we parted ways. My lawyer contacted this morning to tell me that Henry had escalated the situation. His lawyer forwarded images of Rick and me in Hawaii, taken by a detective. Henry accepted the offer. While these images cannot be utilized in the divorce, they could greatly complicate my life. They might make it tough for me to get work if the divorce goes through as planned. Attacking Henry and Michelle in the restaurant was a mistake. I overestimated Henry, believing that he would not risk losing me and would agree to share. Rick was not worth my marriage, and I didn't expect it to end like this. It's been more than a month after the trip, and things are still getting worse. Dean broke up with Holly today following their date. She adores him and had hoped to marry him someday. She burst into tears as he dropped her off, running to her room. I cuddled her for 15 minutes till she settled down. Dean abandoned me. "Mom." Holly cried and buried her face in her hands. "What happened?" I asked, my heart breaking for her. He insisted on having sex, but I continued to say no. He stated that he anticipated more from me, given my mother's actions. When I recounted what you told me about women wanting boyfriends as they get older, he asked whether he might anticipate the same from me if we married. When I did not respond, he ended our relationship, claiming I would cheat on him, she explained, her voice shaking from emotion. It became evident that word of my affair had spread, most likely through Rick's public school disciplinary process. I miscalculated the implications, assuming Henry would stay quiet to avoid embarrassment. My mother had advised me that Dad eventually accepted her romance with Uncle Leo to prevent a big scandal. I assumed Henry would react similarly. Now I need to persuade Henry to return. Rick is no longer in the picture, and I guarantee I will never see him again. I can locate a replacement discreetly by convincing Henry that I only want him once he feels comfortable. Tomorrow, I'll try to follow him home from work again. I spoke with Denise Duncan today, and Becky is still refusing to sign the divorce papers, insisting on another chance to talk and work things out. Denise suggested meeting her face-to-face to convince her that I will not tolerate her actions. Otherwise, this might go on for months with appeals and delays. But I was thinking about other things. It has been 5 weeks since I met Michelle, and I am madly in love with her. Tonight, I'll finally meet Michelle's kid, Joni. Michelle promised me that it would not be definitive, but I understand how crucial it is for Joni to like me. We started with a visit to Chuck E. Cheese. I drove with Michelle holding my hand and Joni smiling in the rear seat. Joni took my hand and brought me into the children's play area at the restaurant. I lost a round of tag to her and eventually discovered her seated on a chair during one of the games. "Are our 8-year-old girls actually that strong?" I asked as I caught my breath. She glanced at me with large brown eyes. "Will you be my new father?" she inquired, her voice hopeful. "Kneel down." I grasped her small hands and said, "I'd like to be if you don't mind, but you don't have to decide right now. I guess I would like you to be my new father. My friends' fathers don't play with them as you do, and Mother thinks you make her happy," she replied with a broad smile. I felt tears build up and requested a hug. Michelle paid close attention to us as we returned to the table. Joni was Michelle's mini-me, just as Holly was, Becky's. The remainder of the evening was amazing. We played games to collect tickets, and Joni received a lovely Barbie doll. We then went for ice cream and returned to our apartment. Joni was exhausted, so we put her in bed and I told her a story. Michelle and I sat on the couch. She questioned, "Are you ready to be a father to a little girl again?" At my age, I had reservations, but now that I've met her, I can't picture anything other. I responded truly. "How about one of our children?" she inquired, her eyes bright with anticipation. "Nothing would make me happier than to have a kid with you, Michelle. Marrying you and being Joni's father would be a dream come true," I replied, my voice filled with emotion. She grinned broadly and said she couldn't wait for my divorce any longer. We made love, and I turned off my phone. Later, I discovered a missed call and voicemail from Denise. "Henry, this is Denise. Becky's lawyer stated that she has decided to sign the documents and will come to my office next week. You do not need to be present, but I will notify you when everything is ready." Denise's statement was delivered in a businesslike tone with a hint of relief. I felt a weight release off my shoulders as I glanced at Michelle, understanding that our future was finally within grasp. That night, I slept quite well. My marriage was finally ending. This morning, I was prepared to battle till the finish. But seeing Holly cry over Dean let me realize how much she was hurt. This was causing her. To avoid damaging my daughter's life, I chose to sign the paperwork. As a mature 41-year-old woman, I dealt with this decision by going to a bar, drinking, and leaving with the first person who asked. I awoke in someone else's apartment, delivered Holly to her friend Leslie's, dressed discreetly, and departed. My car was still outside the club, so I called for a taxi. I went home, had a shower, and wanted to go to bed. So I did. I spent the whole weekend with Michelle and Joni. We visited the zoo on Saturday and ate supper at Lori and Jeff's on Sunday. Joni spent the majority of the day with Alexis and Marcus as they grew up together. Jeff, who was a lovely guy who knew his way around a grill, stood around 180 centimeters tall and in good form. He played baseball in college and had just turned 40 while Lori was 38, and the sisters socialized and watched the children. I spent some time at the grill getting to know Jeff. He and Lori had been married for 15 years, and he was still much in love with her. "She is still the reason I wake up in the morning and do my tasks. I want her to feel proud of me and glad she married me," Jeff said, his voice full of determination. "I am sure you are doing everything correctly, Jeff. She has that confidence since she knows she fulfilled her aim," I replied, wanting to soothe him. "I have known Michelle for a long time. She is obsessed over you, Henry. You have a good wife. She was totally committed to Jay. That's why what he did hurt her so badly." Jeff continued in earnest. "I understand what your wife did. I bet my life Michelle would never take that step." I spoke with profound conviction. "I appreciate it, Jeff. I don't think Michelle would do something like that. Otherwise, I couldn't devote myself to her as fully as I do today." I continued, my voice firm and confident. I felt happy about how both aspects of my life were progressing. "Hopefully, I can get Becky's signature on the form and submit it this week. Then, following the 90-day waiting period, I could bring Michelle to the altar. which I intended to accomplish as soon as possible. My brain was spinning. I believe it's Wednesday, but I've lost track. I've been drinking and going home with various men every night since last Friday, when I decided to sign the divorce papers. Fortunately, the final few guys performed better than the first, so at least I was able to drown my sorrows. But today, if it's Wednesday, I need to sign the papers. I'm not sure what I'll do without Henry. I adore him, but I needed something more. I've never had feelings for Rick. I was supposed to spend my life with Henry, getting older together, spoiling our grandchildren, and traveling the world. Now I will be lonely and regretful for being such a fool. And if Henry ends up with the lovely brunette I saw him with at the restaurant, it will be unbearable. She was stunning and younger than me. I couldn't bear the thought of losing Henry to someone like her. I visited my lawyer's office and we went to see Henry's lawyer. I hoped Henry would be present, but he was not. It hurt to realize he had signed the papers weeks before. He could not wait to be rid of me, and I cannot blame him. Perhaps someday I will apologize in person. For the time being, I'll have my lawyer review and confirm the paperwork before signing it. Holly was spending more time away, so I ate dinner alone that evening. She is probably distancing herself from me. Then I visited the club again. I found a table with 3 young men and offered them a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity if they paid for the hotel room. We left the bar shortly and I was totally sober. This was my retribution for what I had done. After the documents were signed and filed, the 90-day waiting period began and 30 days have already passed. My love for Michelle and Joni keeps growing. Joni now calls me Daddy and it warms my heart every time. Lori and Michelle are already planning the wedding, aiming for lots of flowers and a good reception. They have carte blanche as far as I'm concerned. I proposed the day after Becky signed the papers because I couldn't wait to put a ring on Michelle's finger. The hardest part for me to accept after Becky's actions was Holly's role in it. Becky acted selfishly to achieve her goals, which I could understand, but Holly had no direct benefit other than a happier mother. It was hard to reconcile Holly's apparent happiness from my humiliation. She saw her mother's actions as inevitable and a rite of passage, making her another sufferer of Becky's self-centered views. However, her joy and disdain for my feelings hurt deeply and led to our estrangement. What attracted me to Michelle was the chance to do it right with Joni. When Holly was young, I spent a lot of time working, leaving most of her upbringing to Becky. Holly and I had activities we did together, like soccer and volleyball, but those weren't times for teaching life values about marriage and relationships. I focused on teaching strength and perseverance, while Becky instilled other values, which backfired. I wondered if anything could be fixed at all. Soon my marriage will be officially over. I've been counting down the days on my calendar without Henry. It feels like I have nothing to live for. Holly, now 18, spends most of her time away from home and no longer needs me. Just a few months ago, I had everything: a husband who adored me, a great daughter, and lovers. But my arrogance led it all to crumble. I don't know how I'll cope after the divorce is final. As long as Henry and I were legally married, there was still hope. I haven't spoken to Henry since the day I flew to Hawaii, except for my outburst at the restaurant, which wasn't really a discussion. No one has told me what he's been up to. Is he still with that stunning brunette from the restaurant? Are they serious? Or is he using her to forget me? I worry about his work, hoping my actions haven't impacted his career. Everything was meant to be innocuous. Until that day, Henry had no suspicions. Holly also backed me. But I was stupid for openly discussing it. And now I have a glass of wine in my hand. Sometimes I put it on the nightstand. I still haven't found a guy for tonight, but I never go home alone while I'm out socializing. It occasionally gives me strength, but it's really just a desperate attempt to numb my pain and emotions for a few hours. The divorce would be finalized in a few days, and my wedding to Michelle was in 3 weeks, giving me time to obtain the final decree and a marriage license. This morning, Michelle and Lori took the kids shopping while I cleaned my flat. Michelle's lease expired last month, and she moved to month, even though I still had a few months left. We bought a house nearby to keep Johnny in the same school district, which is one of the best in the state, and we plan to close on the apartment next week. Even though Michelle and I spent every night together, she insisted on waiting until marriage before legally moving in together. So we maintained our separate apartments. Money was not a concern, so I agreed. I received a message stating that they were returning and wanted to make sure I was home. It seemed unusual, but I agreed and looked forward to their return. The response was a happy face. Michelle had her own key, and I generally left the door open while I waited for her. When she knocked, I was astonished. Perhaps she was playing a game, I thought. I answered the door and was surprised to find my daughter. "Hello, Daddy," Holly spoke gently. I stared at my kid silently until she fidgeted nervously. "Can I come inside, Dad?" she inquired, her voice shaking. I shook over the shock and allowed her in. She entered the living room. I shut the door and turned to find her holding back tears. "What are you doing here, Holly? I thought I made it plain that I did not want to hear from you after what you said," I said, attempting to keep my emotions under control. "I made a mistake, Father. I need to talk to you. If you don't want to see me thereafter, I will not disturb you again. Please," she implored, tears welling in her eyes. "Okay, Holly, but how did you know where I live?" I inquired, puzzled. "Michelle is your girlfriend," she revealed. "How did this happen?" I inquired, still astonished. "She called me. She introduced herself, said you were getting married and we needed to discuss. Is this true? I hope you aren't furious at her. She also mentioned that I will have a younger sister." Holly explained, her voice full with hope and worry. She was not the disdainful child I last spoke with. Intrigued, I invited her to relax and offered her a drink. We all drank glasses of iced tea. "Okay, girl, what are you going to say?" I inquired, sinking into my chair. "Dad, I sincerely apologize for how things turned out and what I said, especially the last time I felt Mom deserved what she did, and you were selfish in harming her." Holly began with a voice filled with regret. "So, what made you alter your mind?" I inquired, genuinely curious. "A few items. First, Dean and I broke up." She spoke while looking down. "Dean broke up with you. You two had a great time together." "When did this occur?" I inquired, apprehensive. "A few weeks after you left, I still thought you were an asshole. Mr. Harrington was fired, and everyone at the school soon found out why. Because my mother was unable to provide for me, he paid for everything and then pressured me into having sex. My parental instincts kicked in. I needed to speak with Dean's parents. I knew them well before Holly and Dean began dating, and they would not appreciate it." "And you?" I inquired, needing to know more. She looked at me like the sweet girl I had known before. "No, Daddy," she replied softly. The relief I felt was palpable. "What else has happened?" I prompted. "Well, I was defending Mom." Dean wondered if that meant I would cheat on him when we were older. I didn't know how to respond, so he assumed I would and abandoned me. She explained, her eyes welling with tears. "Wouldn't you?" I asked gently. "No, Dad, I wouldn't," she said firmly. I noticed she was calling me Dad again. I kept thinking about that day. Even then, I might have said it depended on the circumstances, but now I know for certain the answer is no. "That is good. Anything else?" I asked, feeling relieved. "Yes, Daddy. I spent a lot of time with Leslie's folks. I lost many friends, yet they remained close. I mentioned that my mother had informed me that a woman has no right to accomplish anything for herself because she spends her entire life caring for her family. They claimed she behaved badly as a wife and mother." Holly spoke, her voice softening. "You won't get any objections from me," I said, feeling a sense of relief and understanding beginning to bridge the distance between us. They talked to me about wedding vows and pledges. When Leslie was tiny, Mr. P was very sick. He informed Mrs. P he understood if she needed to find someone else because he couldn't be with her. She was furious and claimed vows are about staying faithful through good times and bad. She never thought of doing that to him. They made it plain Mom was just concerned about herself, Holly stated, her voice thick with knowledge. "Years ago, Holly, I had a stronger sex desire than your mother, but I didn't insist on it. We did it when she was prepared. Based on your mother's logic, I could locate another lady whenever I wanted. Do you think she'll be cool with that?" I inquired, hoping to make my point obvious. "No way, Daddy. She'd probably leave you." "I didn't think of it that way," Holly said, her eyes widening with realization. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I believe Mom without thinking. I became swept up in her joy and our secret." "I was mistaken," she admitted, tears flowing down her cheeks. I gave her a napkin and held her warmly. "I forgave you, sweetie. I needed you to see for yourself that this was incorrect. If I tried to tell you, it would only make you dislike me. You needed to figure out what was good and wrong. I'm glad you finally understood. Does this imply you'll be in my life again, Dad? She inquired, her voice full of optimism. Of course, honey. In fact, I have a wedding coming up and I need you, I replied, smiling. Michelle asked me to be a bridesmaid. Leslie will also be there. I can't wait, Holly exclaimed, her excitement returning. What a clever woman, I thought. She knew just what to do. But I realized Holly was thinking about something else. What's the problem, honey? Do you want to mention anything else? I inquired, sensing her uncertainty. It's difficult, Father. I don't want to seem selfish, but she trailed off and appeared uncertain. Simply say it, Holly. We will solve everything, I encouraged her. Dad, may I live with you and Michelle? She inquired, her voice tiny and concerned. I initially assumed it was about money because I only gave Becky enough for food. You know, after the divorce, Mom will have more money. I will pay extra for alimony and child support. That's not the point, Father. Just... Holly paused, clearly troubled. I recognized she wanted to be apart from her mother. Holly, what happened? Why would you want to leave your mother and live with me? Dad, she is not herself. She constantly appears to be inebriated. Half of the time, she does not return home until the next morning. When she gets home at night, a strange person leaves her off and Mrs. Malone has to drive her to her car, Holly stated. Her voice was filled with concern. Does she invite males into the house? I inquired, my protective instincts kicking in. I was upset not because I cared what Becky was doing, but because Holly could be in danger, no matter how upset I am at Becky. I wouldn't want anything bad to happen to her. I do not know, I haven't seen them, but she might when I am not present. I frequently stay at Leslie's, Holly confessed, her voice quiet and scared. Okay, you can stay with us, but we need to discuss this with your mother, I replied strongly. I texted Michelle to come over quickly. Holly and I were on the sofa when Michelle arrived, and she placed her head on my shoulder. So, the wedding is still going on. And you aren't furious at me for inviting Holly? You can't get rid of me so easy, Michelle joked, attempting to lighten the situation. She sat on Holly's other side and Joni got onto my lap. Honey, we have an issue. I said this in a serious tone. I recounted Holly's condition to Becky, who had definitely entered a self-destructive period. Michelle was completely supportive. Do what you need to, it's important. Do you want me to join you? Michelle offered. I believe it is best if I go alone and leave Holly here. I responded, grateful for her encouragement. I drove to my old home for the first time since that day. The yard was a little unkempt, but generally it looked good. Becky's car was in the driveway and no other vehicles were present. I hope this is a good indicator. I rang the doorbell. The house looked the same, but Becky did not. She was disheveled, had lost weight, and wore an old robe. Henry? Oh my God, you are back. Please confirm that you are returning my call, Becky pleaded. I will do anything. Her voice sounded desperate. No, Becky, but I would like to help you. Holly told me what was going on. You cannot go on like this, I said, trying to remain cool. She stared at me, attempting to understand what I said, then flipped. Have you forgiven Holly? So what about me? Where is my forgiveness? She demanded, her eyes ablaze. I forgive you, Becky, I murmured softly. So why don't you want to take me back? I love you, Henry. I need you. Please, Henry, she implored, tears running down her cheeks. Becky, I yelled, raising my voice to attract her attention. I despised yelling, but I needed her to quiet down. Becky, I am here to help you, I replied, my voice hard but kind. I took Becky to the ER where her blood alcohol level was extremely high. A psychiatrist admitted her to the hospital for 72 hours, citing a risk to her own safety. Michelle and I looked into treatment programs and chose one. Treatment was voluntary and we intended to persuade her to attend. That happened 7 years ago. As I prepared to walk Holly down the aisle, I reminisced on the events. The voyage was difficult, but we made it. Michelle and I are still blissfully married. Johnny, 15, idolizes her older sister and looks stunning as Holly's maid of honor. Amelia, 5, likes Johnny and will begin school soon. Tamara, 3, is full of activity and never sits still. Every night I carry her to her cot. Michelle, who is 8 months pregnant, looks more gorgeous with each passing day. Yes, there's another girl. We're still debating names, but Aunt Lori may get her namesake. Sometimes I miss the Becky I married and our plans. I assumed we'd be married for 50 years. Observing generations grow, but life didn't work out that way. We've become friends and see Becky and her husband, Martin, once or twice a month. It's not what I expected, but it's a satisfying life. Thank you for listening to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, leave a comment below with your thoughts on what happened. Take care.